one of the things that would be good for ensuring that the future is one that we want is to more tightly couple the human will to digital intelligence. If you go back, say 300 years, the things that we take for granted today, you'd be burned at the stake for. There are many things that we take for granted today that weren't even imagined in times past. They weren't even in the realm of magic. So it actually goes beyond that. So I thought, well, if I can do some of those things, basically if I can advance technology, that's like magic, and that would be really cool. For me, the social cues were not intuitive. I was, bullied quite a lot. I did not have a sort of happy childhood, to be frank. It was quite rough. But I read a lot of books. I read lots and lots of books. Gradually, I sort of understood more from the books that I was reading and watched a lot of movies. It took me a while to understand things that most people intuitively understand. So maybe some value also from a technology standpoint, because I found it rewarding to spend all night programming computers just by myself, and I think most people don't enjoy typing strange symbols into a computer by themselves all night. They think that's not fun, but I thought I really liked it. The why of things is very important. When I was a young teen, I got quite depressed about the meaning of life, and I was trying to sort of understand the meaning of life, looking at reading religious texts and reading books on philosophy. And then actually I ended up reading The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is actually a book on philosophy, just sort of disguised as a silly humor book. And Adams makes the point that it's actually the question that is harder than the answer. So I have a sort of proposal for a worldview or a motivating philosophy, which is to understand what questions to ask about the answer that is the universe. And to the degree that we expand the scope and scale of consciousness, biological and digital, we'll be better able to ask these questions, to frame these questions, and to understand why we're here, how we got here, what the heck is going on. And so that is my driving philosophy, is to expand the scope and scale of consciousness that we may better understand the nature of the universe. When I started SpaceX, initially I thought that there's no way one could possibly start a rocket company. I wasn't that crazy. But then I thought, well, what is a way to increase NASA's budget? That was actually my initial goal. So I thought, well, if we could do a low-cost mission to Mars, something called Mars Oasis, which would land seeds and dehydrated nutrient gel, and you hydrate them upon landing, and then you'd have this great sort of money shot of green plants on a red background. And the public tends to respond to precedents and superlatives, and this would be the first life on Mars, the furthest that life's ever traveled, as far as we know. And I thought, well, that would get people really excited, and therefore increase NASA's budget. So obviously, the financial outcome from such a mission would probably be zero. So anything better than that was on the upside. I went to Russia 3 times to look at buying a refurbished ICBM. Because that was the best deal. I can tell you it was very weird going there in 2000, late 2001, 2002, going to the Russian rocket forces and saying, I'd like to buy 2 of your biggest rockets, but you can keep the nuke. That's a lot more. And that was 10 years ago, I guess, so they thought I was crazy. My initial impression was that there's not enough will to explore and expand beyond Earth and have a Mars base and that kind of thing. But I came to the conclusion that was wrong. In fact, there's plenty of will, particularly in the United States, because the United States is a nation of explorers, of people who came here from other parts of the world. I think the United States is really a distillation of the spirit of human exploration. I think we want to obviously do our absolute best to ensure that the future is good for everyone's children, and that the future is something that you can look forward to and not feel sad about. You want to get up in the morning and be excited about the future, and we should fight for the things that make us excited about the future. The future cannot just be about one miserable thing after another, solving one sad problem after another. There got to be things that get you excited, like you want to live. These things are very important We should have more of it.
I mean, it's worth noting, as I'm sure people are aware, that the Earth has been around for 4 billion years, and civilization, at least in terms of having writing, has been around for 10,000 years, and that's being generous. So it's really somewhat of a tenuous existence that civilization and consciousness, as we know it, has been on Earth. I'm actually fairly optimistic about the future of Earth. I don't want to sort of people to have the wrong impression that I think we're all about to die. I think things will most likely be okay for a long time on Earth. But not for sure, but most likely. But even if it's sort of 99% likely, a 1% chance, it's still worth spending a fair bit of effort to ensure that we have backed up the biosphere, planetary redundancy, if you will. I think it's really quite important.
In order to accelerate the advent of sustainable energy, there must be scale, because we've got to transition a vast economy that is currently overly dependent on fossil fuels to a sustainable energy economy. The energy's got to be sustainably generated with wind, solar, hydro, geothermal. I'm a believer in nuclear, as Isabel, I think, gave a talk about. And since solar and wind is intermittent, you have to have stationary storage batteries, and then we're going to transition all transport to electric. If we do those things, we have a sustainable energy future. The faster we do those things, the less risk we put to the environment. I love humanity, and I think that we should fight for a good future for humanity, and I think we should be optimistic about the future and fight to make that optimistic future happen.
On the Tesla front, the goal with Tesla was really to try to show what electric cars can do, because people had the wrong impression. We had to change people's perception of an electric vehicle, because they used to think of it as something that was slow and ugly and had low range, kind of like a golf cart. So that's why we created the Tesla Roadster, to show that you can be fast, attractive, and long range. And it's amazing how, even though you can show that something works on paper, and the calculations are very clear, until you actually have the physical object that can drive it, it doesn't really sink in for people. That, I think, is something worth noting. If you're going to create a company, the first thing you should try to do is create a working prototype. Everything looks great on PowerPoint. You can make anything work on PowerPoint. But if you have an actual demonstration article, even if it's in primitive form, that's much, much more effective for convincing people.
The absolutely difficult thing, which has not been accomplished by an American car company in 100 years, is reaching volume production without going bankrupt. That is the actual hard thing. The last American company to reach volume production without going bankrupt was Chrysler in the 1920s.
Right. And it nearly happened to Tesla.
Yes, but it's not like, oh, geez, I guess if we'd just done more manual stuff, things would have been fine. Of course not. That is definitely not the case. We basically messed up almost every aspect of the Model 3 production line, from cells to packs to drive inverters, motors, body line, the paint shop, final assembly, everything. Everything was messed up. I lived in the Fremont and Nevada factories for 3 years, fixing that production line, running around like a maniac through every part of that factory, living with the team.
Yeah.
I slept on the floor so that the team who was going through a hard time could see me on the floor, that they knew that I was not in some ivory tower. Whatever pain they experienced, I had it more. There wasn't any other way to make it work. There were 3 years of hell. 2017, 18, and 19 was the longest period of excruciating pain in my life. There wasn't any other way. And we barely made it, and we were on the ragged edge of bankruptcy the entire time. So much pain. But it had to be done, or Tesla would be dead.
Do you feel that this challenge of figuring out the new way of manufacturing, that you actually have an edge now, that it's different, that you figured out how to do this, and from those 3 years won't be repeated? You've actually figured out a new way of manufacturing.
At this point, I think I know more about manufacturing than anyone currently alive on Earth. I don't like to lose. I'm not sure many people do. But the truth matters to me a lot. And so the obsession with truth is why I studied physics, because physics attempts to understand the truth of the universe. Physics is just what are the provable truths of the universe, and truths that have predictive power. So for me, physics was sort of a very natural thing to study. Nobody made me study it. It was intrinsically interesting. to understand the nature of the universe. And then computer science or information theory, also to just understand logic. And there's an argument that information theory is actually operating at a more fundamental level than even physics.
I think the overarching point I want to make is that you guys are the magicians of the 21st century. Don't let anything hold you back. Imagination is the limit. Go out there and create some magic. Thank you.